Hello, and welcome along to another episode of the Ottoman Empire series. And in this episode, we'll be talking about Sultan Bayezid I. Now, Sultan Bayezid I, also known as Bayezid the Thunderbolt, was born in 1360 and he lived until 8th of March 1403. And he ruled from 1389 till 1402. And he was also known as Sultan-e-Rum. So, if you didn't know already, Bayezid was the son of Sultan Murad I, the previous Sultan. And if you don't know who that is, I suggest you go back and watch the previous episode because you're missing out. And well, in this episode, we're talking about Sultan Bayezid before he became Sultan. And before he became the Ottoman ruler, he was the governor of Kütahya. And he got this title by marrying the daughter of the ruler of the Germanid tribe. So he was a great soldier at first, and he earned the nickname Thunderbolt from his battle against the Karamanids. And he married the daughter of Prince Lazar, Olivera Despina, and this was after the Battle of Kosovo. So, after the events of the Battle of Kosovo in 1389, Sultan Murad and Prince Lazar were pronounced dead. Bayezid took this opportunity to cement his position as the sole heir of the Ottoman Empire. He did this by killing his younger brother, Yakub Çelebi, and the Serbians at this point were divided into supporting or opposing the Ottoman Empire since they were really powerful at the time and their influence on the Balkans was slowly growing due to Sultan Murad's previous campaigns. And they wanted to save Hungary from being invaded by the Ottomans. So Prince Lazar's daughter married the new Sultan, Bayezid I. The son of the Prince Lazar, Stefan Lazarevich, became a loyal ally of Bayezid. Bayezid wanted to unify Anatolia. The Sultan began unifying Anatolia under his rule. Forcible expansion into Muslim territories could have endangered the Ottoman Empire relationship with the Ghazis, who were an important source of warriors for this ruling house on the European frontier. Bayezid began the practice of securing fatwas on legal rulings from Islamic scholars. This was to justify the wars against the Muslim states. However, Bayezid suspected the loyalty of his Muslim Turkish followers, so he relied heavily on his Serbian and Byzantine vassal troops in these conquests. So, in a single campaign over the summer and fall of 1390, Bayezid conquered the beyliks of Aydin, Saruhan, and Mentisha. His major rival Suleiman, the emir of Karaman, responded by allying himself with the ruler of Sivas, Qadi Burhan al-Din, and the remaining Turkish beyliks. Nonetheless, Bayezid pushed on and overwhelmed the remaining beyliks, called Hamid, Teke, and Jermian, as well as taking the cities of Akşehir and Niğde, as well as their capital Konya from the Karaman. At this point, Bayezid accepted peace proposals from Karaman in 1391, concerned that further advances would antagonize his Turkmen followers and lead them to ally of Qadi Burhan al-Din. Once peace had been made with Karaman, Bayezid moved north against Kastamonu city in northern Turkey, which had been given refuge to many fleeing from his forces, and conquered both that city as well as Sinop. Sinop is in the northernmost Turkish city of the Black Sea coast. So then his campaign was stopped by Burhan al-Din at the Battle of Kirkdilim. So from 1389 to 1395, he conquered Bulgaria and northern Greece. In 1394, Bayezid crossed the Danube River to attack Wallachia, ruled at the time by Mikre the Elder. The Ottomans were superior in number, but on 10th of October 1394, in the Battle of Rovine, a forested and swampy terrain, the Wallachians won the fierce battle and prevented Bayezid's army from advancing beyond the Danube. In 1394, Bayezid laid siege to the capital of the Byzantine Empire, which was Constantinople, and he built the Andalusian fortress to lay siege to Constantinople for the second time in 1395. Both of these conquests turned out to be unsuccessful. So next, I'm going to be talking about the Battle of Nicopolis. But before that, I'm going to talk about the background of it. So this battle took place on 25th of September 1396 against a large-scale Crusader army. This included Hungarians, Croatians, Bulgarians, Wallachians, Polish, French, Burgundian, German, English, Knights Hospitaller, which were a Catholic military order from Jerusalem, Iberians, which were people from between Spain and Portugal, Italians, Bohemians, which were modern-day Czech Republicans, and Byzantine troops, assisted by the Venetian army. So, a bit about the total number of this army of Crusaders is estimated to be around 130,000. This is according to numerous sources and Ottoman historian Shukrullah, who gave this number in the 1460s in his Behçtu Devare. So, whilst the same historian estimated Ottoman and Allied forces of Stefan Lazarevic, the son of Prince Lazar, who's now Sultan Bayezid's ally, to be half of this number, so 60,000 Ottoman troops with 1,500 Serbian heavy cavalry from the side of Stefan Lazarevic. These were heavy knights cavalry who were on the side of Sultan Bayezid. So, as for where the battle was actually taking place, Nicopolis. This was located in a natural defensive position and a key stronghold controlling the lower Danube and lines of communication to the interior. If you can imagine this, a small road ran between the cliff and river, whilst the fortress was actually two walled towns, the larger one on a cliff and the smaller one below. It was well defended, well supplied, and it was ruled by the Turkish governor of Nicopolis, Dogan Bey, who was certain that Bayezid would come to aid the town and was prepared to endure a long siege against the Crusaders. The Crusaders wanted to starve the city defenders and block the river with their navy. So 2 weeks passed on as the bored Crusaders entertained themselves with games, feasts, and insulting the prowess of their enemy. Whether through drunkenness or carelessness, the Crusaders posted no sentries, so guards, though foragers ventured away from the camp and brought word of the Turkish approach. Bayezid was already through Adrianople, which is modern-day Edirne, and on a forced march through the Shipke Pass, central Bulgaria, to Tirnovo, which is north-central Bulgaria. His ally, Stefan of Serbia, joined him on the way. Sigismund, who was a Holy Roman Emperor and Bohemian king, had sent 500 horsemen to carry out a military lookout in enemy lands, Ottoman lands, around Tirnovo, 70 miles, 110 kilometers to the south, and they brought back word that the Turks were indeed coming. Word also reached the besieged inhabitants of Nicopolis, who blew horns and cheered. The Battle of Nicopolis started on 25th of September 1396, and Sigismund sent his Grand Marshal to Neves to check on the Turkish vanguard numbers. But Deu thought that Sigismund just wanted the battle honours for himself, so they fought amongst themselves on who should lead the army. Even though Sigismund, the Holy Emperor, should have ideally led the army, Deu, who was in charge of the French vanguard, along with Coucy and Neves, who controlled the main body of the army, were really on the side of Deu, and he went to battle, advanced to battle, even though he was advised by the Hungarians to wait and plan it all out before going on all-out war. So the argument seems to have been settled, but only because Deu advanced into battle without even consulting with his allies, council, or the Hungarians. So Deu took control of the French vanguard, while Neves and Coucy took control of the main body. The French knights, along with their mounted archers, rode out with their backs to Nicopolis to meet with the Turks, who were descending from the hills by the south. The Knights Hospitaller, Germans, and other allies stayed with Sigismund. The French charge crushed the untrained conscripts and advanced towards the trained infantry of the Turkish army. And what they didn't know was that they had stakes ready, which skewered the horses' stomachs that were charging from the French side. So these stakes were sharpened to then, place in front of the Turkish army infantry, and while the horses were charging at them from the French horses, were skewered, so their stomachs were cut up because of the stakes that were sharpened. The French infantry were routed, so they fled towards the Sipais, which were the heavy cavalry Turkish troops. Coucy and Vienne recommended to Deu that, they should take a rest, to reform the ranks, to reorganize their ranks, and so the Hungarians can then advance onwards and do their part. But they were overruled by the younger knights, who believed that they destroyed Bayezid's army, entire army or most of their army, and wanted to push on. The French knights continue uphill in their heavy armor and mostly on foot, because they had either been dismounted themselves, or because of the sharp stakes, their horses had been skewered. And well, they were going uphill with the heavy armor. It's already difficult for them to get up the hill, and what they don't know is that they're met with a fresh corps of Sipahis, so heavy cavalry Turkish troops, who Bayezid had kept in reserve because he knew that this ruse would work. As the Sipahis surged forward in the counterattack, they sounded trumpets, they banged kettle drums, and shouted the takbir. Whilst the French were overwhelmed, most of them retreated, but others fought on. And after this, the Turks took Neves as prisoner, and the French, after seeing this, Neves taken prisoner and other noblemen taken prisoners, the French yielded because their leader had been taken. Sipahis were sweeping along the flanks in an envelopment. Accounts tell of the Hungarians and other nationalities in confused combat, along with a stampede of horses, of riderless horses, running towards them. Tuchman, a historian, speculates that the horses were purposely pulled away from their tethers and then set free, whilst the Transylvanians and Wallachians, upon witnessing this and knew that the battle had been lost, thought that the battle had been lost, and retreated. Sigismund, along with the Master of Rhodes and the Germans, managed to fight on, despite the unspeakable massacres from both sides. At this point, the Turks received much-needed reinforcements from the Serbian Stefan Lazarevic and his 1,500 Serbian troops. Sigismund's forces were overwhelmed, and Sigismund and the Master of Rhodes managed to escape on a fisherman's boat to their Venetian ships on the Danube. So the reason Sigismund and the Master of Rhodes could escape in the first place was because Nicholas II of Garay was fighting on their behalf whilst they escaped. And Nicholas II of Garay was a former ally of the Ottomans. He was an ally of Murad I, the former Sultan, who is now dead. But Bayezid and Stefan Lazarevic noticed this during the battle. And Sigismund's army later on surrendered, and this completed the defeat in detail. The aftermath of the Battle of Nicopolis. Bayezid toured the battlefield later that day, hoping to find the corpse of the King of Hungary. He ordered the execution of the prisoners in Nicopolis in retaliation for the earlier Rahavo massacre of the Ottoman prisoners by the Crusaders. The Turks recognized Jacques de Heli, and French knight who had served under Murad I, and had him identify the chief nobles for ransom. Cusi, Bar, Deu, Guy de la Tremole, and several others were grouped with Neves to be spared. Those judged to be under 20 were also spared and were taken as slaves. Bayezid ordered the execution of the rest of the captured crusaders, either by decapitation or severing their limbs, forcing Neves and the rest to watch, but later on stopped the execution. After 300 to 3,000 estimated executions, either due to feeling sick or witnessing the execution, or to avoid further future revolt of Christendom against the Ottomans, unnecessary ones. The last of the Crusader leaders, Neves, Bucicu, Guglielmo, and Jacques de la Marche, along with 7 or 8 other knights, were allowed to enter France again in February 1398. They were greeted by minstrel parties and parades as they journeyed across the kingdom. No new expedition was launched from Western Europe to stop Turkish advances in the Balkans after their defeat until the 1440s. England and France renewed their war. Wallachia continued its stance against the Ottomans, having stopped another expedition in the next year, and in 1397 and in 1400. The Battle of Nicopolis is also regarded as the end of the Second Bulgarian Empire, with the defeat of the Crusaders and its last ruler, Ivan Stratimir, Emperor of Bulgaria, who was captured and killed in Bursa. The Turks had become a greater threat to Central Europe. The Battle of Ankara was fought on 20th of July 1402 between the forces of Sultan Bayezid I and Timur Tamerlane of the Timurid Empire, and this was on the Chubuk Plains. So before the Battle of Ankara 1402, as always, the background of it all. So Timur was a Turco-Mongol from Transsoxia, now Uzbekistan, had built an empire in Central Asia over the years and became the most powerful ruler in Central Asia since Genghis Khan. He sought to rebuild the once great Mongol Empire. In the 1380s and 1390s, he invaded and conquered parts of Persia, including Azerbaijan and Upper Mesopotamia, ravaged southern Russia and Ukraine in 1395-96, and sacked Delhi, India in 1398. Although there had been tensions between the Ottomans and Mongols, nothing would warrant a war. That is until Bayezid demanded tribute from an emir loyal to Timur, which he took personally and a reason for war. In 1400 or 1401, Timur took Sivas, city in central Turkey, from the Ottomans, parts of Syria from the Mamluks, and next directed towards Anatolia. Meanwhile, in 1402, the Ottomans had been campaigning in Europe. Bayezid broke off the blockade of Constantinople and marched to Ankara after Timur again moved his troops to the southwest in the summer of 1402. When the Ottomans arrived, they were tired and thirsty, but were allowed no time to rest or recuperate. Bayezid was advised by his generals to take up defensive positions. And when Timur's forces pushed back the Ottomans to withdraw into the mountains and forced Timur to break ranks and attempt to hunt the Ottomans in their own terrain during the midsummer heat, Bayezid instead chose to take an offensive stance and marched eastward. Now you can see the correlation between taking an offensive stance when your troops aren't ready. And, Deu did the same in the previous battle of Nicopolis, and you saw how that turned out. Now let's see how this battle turns out, with Bayezid advancing forward. So advancing Ottoman scouts found no trace of the Timurids, who secretly marched southwest, rested and were situated to the rear of the Ottomans. The Timurids encamped in the same place, same locations that the Ottomans had previously occupied, making use of abandoned tents and water sources. In the Timurid army, Timur commanded the center, and his sons Miran and Shahrukh to the right and left, and his grandsons the vanguard. In the Ottoman army, Bayezid commanded the center with Janissaries, his son stood on the left flank, Stefan Lazarevich to the right, with the Balkan troops, and Bayezid's son Mehmed, the rearguard. The Battle of Ankara began with a large-scale attack from the Ottomans, countered by the arrows from the Timurid horse archers. Several thousand Ottomans were killed, and many surrendered to Timur. Stefan Lazarevich and his Serbian knights managed to break through Mongol ranks 3 times, and each time they did, Stefan Lazarevich advised Bayezid to break out with him, but Bayezid declined each time. The Serbians managed to save one of Bayezid's sons and protect the treasury from the Mongols before retreating back to Constantinople. The Serbian troops were wearing black armor, which were really effective against the Timurid arrows. And Timur praised the Serbian troops for the way they fought, as he thought that they fought very brave and, quote, they fight like lions. During the battle, the main water supply of both armies was redirected to Chubuk Creek and was diverted to an off-stream reservoir near the town of Chubuk. This strategy was carried out by none other than Timur Tamerlane, and this left the Ottoman army with no water. The final battle took place at Katal Hill, and this was overlooking the Chubuk Valley. The Ottoman army were both tired and thirsty, and ultimately this led to their defeat. Bayezid, along with a few hundred of his horsemen, escaped to the nearby mountains. But what he didn't know was that Timur Tamerlane already had the mountains surrounded with the rest of his army, and this led to Bayezid soon being captured. So Timur captured Bayezid, and soon Bayezid died in captivity 3 months later. The aftermath of the Battle of Ankara. After the battle, Timur moved through western Anatolia to the Aegean coast, where he besieged and took the city of Smyrna, or modern-day Izmir, a stronghold for the Christian Knights of Hospitaller. They're the Catholic military from Jerusalem. The battle almost resulted in the total collapse of the Ottoman Empire. This resulted in a civil war between Bayezid's sons. The Ottoman Civil War continued for another 11 years, till 1413, following the Battle of Ankara. This battle is also significant in Ottoman history for being the only time an Ottoman Sultan had been captured in battle in person. Thanks for watching, and please like, subscribe, share it if you can, and peace.